Hello, everyone. I welcome you all to the guest speaker session of Technica. ISTE is a national, professional, non-profit making society. We are dedicated to providing technical education and guidance to budding engineers and technicians so that they can excel in their fields. A little heads up, we are going to do a giveaway during this session. So be interactive and try to answer any question that Madam asks as soon as possible. ISTE-VIT presents you an insightful webinar called Product Launch Formula. So today we have with us our esteemed guest, Ms. Saraswathy Rajamoorthy, an entrepreneur and co-founder of Learning Matters. While pitching any product in a hackathon, it's necessary to have a proper business model and an organized strategy. This is precisely what this webinar will be teaching you. In this webinar, participants will learn how to make their product market ready. It will give participants the knowledge and confidence to move their products from the ideation stage to the launch stage. I hope all of you will get insights to efficient product management after this session. Welcome, ma'am. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are really excited to hear from you. Over to you, ma'am. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, ISTE, for inviting me to Horizon, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here. It's very nice to be considered as a mentor, and of course, as an entrepreneur, as a startup founder. We have so many learnings, so many experiences, and I think the first thing any entrepreneur should do is always be willing to share their experiences with others. India is now becoming a startup nation, in the world. As I'm sure all of you who are interested in entrepreneurship and in startups have been seeing the number of unicorns that we've had just in 2021, right? So we are fast on our way to competing with Silicon Valley. Bangalore is called India's Silicon Valley, but I think we're going to outbeat them very soon. So once again, thank you so much, ISTE. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Arunodai, Manasvi, Samiksha, all of you, part of the team who have been so professional and so prompt in all of your communications with me. Really appreciate that. So I'd like to take a few minutes to quickly talk about my background as well as what Learning Matters does. I know Samiksha said that I'm an entrepreneur and I'm one of the co-founders of Learning Matters. But what is it that Learning Matters does? What domain is our startup? Does our startup belong to? So here are a few things I'd like to talk about before we get into the meat of the session. So I'm Saraswathy Rajamoorthy, one of the co-founders of Learning Matters. We are an education technology startup based out of Bangalore. A bit about my background. So I actually jumped into entrepreneurship pretty late. These days we have, the average age of entrepreneurs is getting younger and younger. So I myself started entrepreneurship, jumped into it pretty late. I have a master's in child development and family studies and another one in special education, both from Purdue University in the US. I did my master's there. I worked there for a long time in the field of early childhood education. So I was very much in the classroom, training teachers, working with young children, and absolutely passionate about early childhood education. I also worked in print curriculum and in digital content development at Pearson, which is, as many know, a very big publishing company based out of the United Kingdom. And after that, that is when, about 6 years ago, is when my co-founders and I decided to stop what we were doing, which is working for someone else, and decided to do something in the field of education because we are so passionate about education. More than anything else, all the three of us believe very passionately that education is the single most impactful thing that can happen to someone, and education has absolutely the power to transform and change someone's lives, right? Without education, it's very hard to change your life and to change the life of the generations coming after you. So we wanted to do something that was truly impactful in the field of education for India, and we wanted to do this on our own terms, which is why we decided to start Learning Matters. Learning Matters builds technology-based educational solutions for schools. So we work directly with schools across India. Our solutions are ensured to have a foundation of technology, because technology is the one way that you can make your product scalable and sustainable. Make sure that it is something that can be easily used by hundreds of users and customers. So we have, we train teachers. We also have an artificial intelligence and natural language processing based virtual voice teacher that teaches communicative English to both teachers and students. And we also have a digital content platform as well as physical activity kits. So we focus on providing a very holistic, comprehensive solution to schools, unlike most of the other edtech providers out there who focus on selling their products directly to students. And these are mostly after school products that are meant to be used by students at home and not during regular school hours. Conversely, we work with schools during regular school hours. We want to ensure that teachers are given enough importance. So whatever solution it is that we do with schools, we ensure that the teachers are a part of it, because if you can impact a teacher, then you can impact thousands of generations of students. And so we have been operational for close to 6 years now, and have worked with a variety of schools, mostly in Tier 2 and Tier 3 India. So, which is, drastically different from Tier 1. And that has been our passion. That has been what we have been doing all these years. Entrepreneurship in itself is highly complex, and there are so many layers to it. I know these days, with all the news of all the unicorns and all of that, it really looks like it's super glamorous, and it looks like it's very easy, because we're inundated with news of all of the mergers and acquisitions by big players like Byju's. We're inundated with all the news of all the new unicorns in India and how many unicorns are there in India. By the way, a unicorn is a startup that is valued at more than $1 billion. So just in the first 3 months of 2021, we've had about 6 to 7 new unicorns in India. The analysts are projecting several more unicorns in India by the end of this year. And all of this is fantastic, of course, for India's startup scene. It's absolutely wonderful to showcase India as a very strong contender, for startups in the world. It shows that we have huge talent, huge capability. It shows that we have huge potential here in our country, and all of this is fantastic. But I think in all of this news, one big thing that we all tend to forget is that no matter how much, no matter how much of this kind of news you hear, please remember that what you are seeing and what you're hearing about these startups are just the very, even less than 1% of the total startups out there. So the success rate with startups is very, very low. So all of these startups that you're seeing are definitely an exception. It's like an iceberg. You're only seeing the tip. You're not seeing or hearing, or you don't get to hear the stories of all of the other startups that have worked as hard, tried as hard, but not done as well, and have either failed or are in the process of deciding what to do next. So those startups form the bulk of the total number of startups, and so that's one thing that I always like to tell people, especially youngsters such as yourselves, that what you need to remember is entrepreneurship is a wonderful teacher. I think the amount that you learn from starting up your own business, no matter what it is or whatever domain, the life experiences are wonderful. The amount you learn is tremendous. But you also have to be ready for a lot of hardship and a lot of failure, a lot of negativity, a lot of self-doubt. Overcoming all of that is what makes the difference. So with that short introduction, what I'd actually like to do for this session, I know the hosts and the events team were very nice to give me a list of topics that they wanted me to talk about, such as product development life cycle, product market fit, and all of that. But what I'd really like to do is make this as interactive as possible. In this format where I am unable to see and interact with the audience is very tough, and that means that I'm kind of flying blind here, right? So I don't know if what I'm saying is actually of interest to you. I don't know if it's actually meaningful or relevant to you. I hope that it is. So what I'd like to do is request that the audience go ahead and start asking me questions, anything about entrepreneurship. And what I can do is, what I'd like to do is answer these from the point of view of my entrepreneurship journey and from the point of view of learning matters and what we've done in all these years. These days information is information. There's so much information on the net, right? I mean, all of you, any one of you can just Google, how to achieve product market fit, or what is meant by product development life cycle, or what's the best way to what's the best way to create to pitch to investors, and you will find enough and more good information, really good information from really good credible sources on how to do all of this, right? So you don't need me to tell you that. There's enough and more information on the internet. But what I can do that's different from what you'll find on the internet, and how I can be of some value add here in this session is actually take questions or maybe get into a discussion with you. It doesn't even have to be a specific question. You can even say, what do you think about this, or do you think this is the right way to do this, or things like that. And that way, I think that's going to be really meaningful for all of you, because I'm sure you have thoughts, I'm sure you have questions, I'm sure you're wondering about different aspects of entrepreneurship and starting up or not starting up. And I'd like to say, please use this opportunity to ask me questions, because there's nothing that I can say to you about specific aspects of the product development life cycle that you haven't heard before or that you can't find on the internet. 200% you can find it, and you can find good information. So I'd like to request that we make this very interactive. So go ahead and please start sending in your questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking at the questions and then just answering those. So that way, let's make this a conversation rather than you simply listening to so-called gyan from me, right? So
Well, indeed, interaction and discussions, they are the best way to pass knowledge and experiences. And,
absolutely.
there is a lot of information already available in the internet, but we need some guidance to streamline those information so that we could
Okay.
actually use it. So,
Okay.
madam, I'll be telling you all the questions from the chat.
Wonderful.
And yeah. And if I have some doubts myself too, I will ask you because
Please
I'm
go ahead,
really interested in
Samiksha.
product management.
Great. So first thing is, I'd like to pick up on something that Samiksha just said. You said, there is a lot of information on the internet, but how do we find information that's actually accurate and genuine? And that's an
Exactly.
excellent point. Yeah. So right now we have, access to too much information, right? I mean, it's absolutely too much. And so when you type in things especially about entrepreneurship, there is so much information out there. You can read and keep reading for days and days, and ultimately, if you're like me, end up getting confused by what you read. So what I'd like to suggest is, when you do look up, and there is a lot of really good information out there, guys. So if you're going to look up things like investing, or how do I find the right investor, or just anything about product market, what is product market fit, I would say look for websites. A lot of the big investment companies themselves put out information, because it's their way of, of course, building their brand, also showing that they care about sharing their knowledge with the community at large. So look for information that's coming from any of the big venture capitalists, maybe Sequoia, or any of your other big VCs. Look for them, and look for websites that are from these big guys, because they're going to give you information that comes from years of experience. That's not to say that that people with fewer years of experience don't have valuable things to say. They do, but I think what you have to do is be clear about what you're looking for. Do look at the source. Do look at whose website it is. And then take the information. And once you read 3 or 4 different sources, and you'll start seeing patterns in what you're reading, right? And that's when you'll know that yes, now you're reading the same information again and again. The other thing is, um, when you're looking for things, if you're planning to start up in India, then look for websites that are giving you information about starting up in India and versus starting up in the US, because a lot of the websites, a lot of information on entrepreneurship tends to come from the United States as well, and there things can be very different. The entrepreneurship scene, the investment scene, the domains that they invest in, what's considered hot, what's considered not, way to go about investment, guidelines, rules are very, very different. So make sure you're looking at things that are specific to India, because you want to be sure that you're getting information that's relevant for you, right? So that's just a short a few points that I wanted to share. So thanks, Amisha, for bringing up that point. So Samiksha, you can go ahead and start reading out the questions, starting from the
Yes,
beginning.
madam. So we
And you
have
can
the
also please
question.
say, please also say who asked the question. I'd like to know the name
Okay,
of the
ma'am, sure.
person.
So we have a question from Anushka Dixit. We look at so many success stories, but what does it actually take to think and implement an idea and finally make it a success?
Okay, thank you, Anushka, for that great question. You've also pretty much asked the all-encompassing question about entrepreneurship, right? So, yes, and you're exactly right. What we see, what we hear in the media and the press is only the success stories. How much Byju's is valued at, how much Byju's has made now, how much people have invested in them. And those numbers are huge. Okay, those numbers are huge. They run in billions, and all of these unicorns. You need to know the stories of all of the other smaller startups. You need to know the stories of all of those people who tried really hard and failed. Because trust me, there are way more of them than the Byju's and everyone else, right? So to getting to your point, what does it actually take to think and implement an idea and finally make it a success? Okay. So let's start at the beginning. So before jumping into entrepreneurship, each one of you who's thinking about it, considering it, you first need to be very clear on why you want to do this, right? And when I say you need to be clear, I'm not saying just sit and think for a while and say, yeah, I'm good. This is what I want to do. I mean, actually write down. Write down what it is about entrepreneurship that is attracting you. Start writing things or typing things down in a document. Because let me tell you one thing, entrepreneurship is incredibly hard. It's very tough, and you give up. You have to give up a lot of things, right? Time, in the case of youngsters like you, if you decide to get into entrepreneurship right after you finish your degree, it means that while your other colleagues, your peers, are going on to have jobs and starting to earn and starting to build their career, what you're doing is, yes, you're building in a different way, but then you are also, 5 years hence, if you do decide that entrepreneurship was not for you, or 4 years hence, if you do decide, then understand that now you're back at square zero, while the others your age, your peers, are now 5 years ahead of you, right? So think about, I don't mean at all to be a negative Nancy, but I think what I'm doing here is trying to be as real as I can, and trying to tell you the things that maybe a lot of people won't tell you. Entrepreneurship is wonderful. I repeat, there is nothing like entrepreneurship to teach you life lessons. What you can learn in 10 years, you learn in 2 years, right? It definitely makes you wiser. It definitely makes you stronger, but it also has the potential to break you down, right? So what I'm trying to do is trying to show you the real side of things and show you the pros and cons. So first of all, be very, very honest about why you want to get into entrepreneurship, why you want to start up something of your own. Once you're clear on that, and once you know that you understand where you're going to, what are the cons for yourself, where are you going to lose out, what is it that you're going to lose out, and if you're okay with that, and if you accept that, and you're ready to move on, I think the next big question is, think about, are you going to go the distance alone, Or are you going to look for a partner, a co-founder, someone who's going to be with you? Typically, startups have two co-founders. Now Learning Matters has three. We're three good friends who started this. Three is not as common. You tend to have two co-founders being the most common. Solo co-founders also is there. That also tends to be a little lesser than two. So think about, first of all, what is the domain that your startup is going to be in. Think about, what's the problem you're going to solve, right? I mean, this is the question that you have to ask yourself millions of times. This is the question you will be asked at any investor meeting, any pitch. The very first thing that you'll be asked is, what's the problem you're solving? And what is the solution you have that is unique? Why do you think that your solution is unique? Why do you think your solution is investable? This is the crux of it, guys. So if you really think that you can make a difference in whatever field it is, something to do with engineering, if it's medtech, it's fintech, it's edtech, whatever it is, it's agri-tech, whatever it is, it's AI, it's ML, whatever it is, be very clear about what is it that you want to do. There should be a specific problem that you're solving, because if there is no problem to solve, then what is it that you're going to do? So I think these are the first few things, Anushka. Being very clear about why you want to be an entrepreneur, why you want to start up, and what you're willing to sacrifice and give up for it. And be very, very honest, right? I mean, it's perfectly okay to do this mental exercise, maybe even to talk to people. If you could talk to friends, talk to family, talk to trusted mentors. Maybe many of you all, I'm sure, have advisors and professors in college or whoever who really understand you, know your personality, know your strengths. Talk to people like that who will tell you, and ask them to be very brutally honest with you. Ask them, do you think I have what it takes? Because the answer is you should have what it takes, right? So talk to people like that to find out if the idea of entrepreneurship is something that is right for your personality, your qualities, your strengths, your mental attitude, the way you approach things. Talk to a lot of people to understand if it's right for you. Think about it yourself, and look, if the answer comes up and you find out that, okay, I'm actually not comfortable. I think I'm way more comfortable and I'll be more happy applying for a job, getting a job, earning a salary every month that keeps me comfortable, that keeps me confident. Maybe many of you all may have other family commitments and responsibilities, which mean that you cannot get into entrepreneurship. See, these are all real things that you have to consider. You're at a very important part of your lives, right? I would give anything to be where you are, right? I miss those years so badly. So best years of my life, right? So you're at such an important juncture where you're making this transition. So it's the good thing is that you're so young and you have time on your side. So if you do decide to get into entrepreneurship after having considered all these things, and you find out in 2 years or 3 years that it's not right for you, no problem. You still have your entire life ahead of you, right? It's not like start being an entrepreneur at 40, which is kind of what my co-founders and I did. I think I was 39 when we started Learning Matters. So we don't have time. When you jump into entrepreneurship that late, you already have commitments. You have family, you have children, you have other commitments, and you have the stress of thinking about all of that. You guys don't have that. So what you do have on your side is you guys are fearless, right? Most of you are absolutely fearless. You're like, the world is my playground, right? And I'm the boss of it. And you need to have that attitude. So at the same time, you also need to consider, do you have other commitments? Do you have other things that perhaps will prevent you from, getting into entrepreneurship? Because there will be many months, there will be many years when you will not have any income coming in, right? Until you have your product up and running and you have customers and you have traction. So think about all of that. Think about the team. Are you going to do this alone? Are you going to do this with someone? Choosing a co-founder, I repeat, is one of the most important things that you have to think about. It has to be someone who you can be absolutely honest with, right? Someone that you trust, who has your back at any time. My co-founders and I are like that. I know that I can tell them, guys, I cannot make it for this meeting. I just have to rush home for the kids. And they will say, go, just go. We have your back, right? So your co-founder has to be someone who you absolutely trust. It should be someone that you can have the most difficult of conversations with. And I can't stress this enough, right? You have to be able to talk money with them. You have to be able to talk every single detail. How many, what's the percentage of, how much will you hold in the company? How much will I hold in the company? If you're unable to have a difficult conversation with that person for whatever reason, you probably should think if that's the right co-founder for you. So these are the things, Anushka, that you have to think about before you can even think about, executing your idea or taking it from ideation to implementation. First, think about these things, get these right. And of course, in India, there's also a whole bunch of paperwork you have to do once you get into entrepreneurship and you have your startup. So don't neglect that. All of the paperwork, the registration of your company, incorporation, everything is important, and you have to do that, because if you don't, you're missing something. Later on, it will come back and bite you in the wrong place. So make sure you have all that done. Get all the basics, these fundamental things out of the way. And of course, the other critical thing would be thinking about what's the problem you're going to solve, and make sure there is a real problem. Make sure there is a real problem. Make sure there is a solution that you can bring that's unique, right? I think these are the basic things, and I hope I answered your question, Anushka. That was a very big question.
Exactly. I hope every one of us got a reality check to what entrepreneurship really is. So, moving on to the next question, ma'am.
Yeah.
Tiham Hussain wants to ask you, what is the most challenging issue in front of a product manager?
Okay. And who asked the question?
It's Tiham Hussain.
Tiham. Okay, thank you, Tiham. Very nice question. What's the most challenging issue in front of a product manager? So the way it works in startups is, once the team grows to a certain level, Tiham, as you know, they will be you'll have a tech team that's working on the technology. You'll have most often the technology team is part of the product team. So you'll have someone who is ideating the product. It usually trickles down from the founders, from the CEO. The idea comes down to the execution, right? So I'm assuming you're asking your question with respect to a startup. So the most challenging issue in front of a product manager is, see, a lot of startups run very lean, right? Which means they don't have a lot of resources. It's not like your big companies that are putting out new products and they have all the money in the world to throw at it, right? So the most challenging issue for a product manager in a startup will be, especially a startup that's still not hit like the Series B, Series C, and has so much funding, is they're running very lean. They have very limited resources, and I mean money. They have very limited budget. So the product manager will basically have to achieve the world, but on a very tight budget, right? So developing your product, testing, right? So testing is one of the most important things in a startup. You have to test every single assumption. The product team thinks the product is right, but you're only looking at it like a horse with blinders, right? It's your product, it's your baby, so you're looking at it from a certain angle. Make sure every stage, every version, every release is tested with someone who represents the end user, right? Because they're going to find 100 different things wrong with it. So the most challenging issue would be getting, updating your product from the last release to the next release, fixing the bugs, doing all of that, making sure the user experience, the user UI UX is wonderful, but doing all of that on possibly a very lean budget, right? So that's going to be the challenging issue. So if you're someone who is wonderful with product management, but you enjoy the challenge of doing it on in a startup scene, then I say that would be the right fit for someone like you. So I hope I answered your question, Tiham.
I hope the question was answered. So moving on
And
to
if
the
not, they
next
can
question.
always, if not, you can always, or if you have further questions, you can always send it in through chat, and Samiksha will read it out.
So, okay, Khushbu
Thank you,
Najawan is
Khushbu.
saying, ma'am, you're really inspiring.
Thank you so much,
Yes,
Khushbu.
indeed.
Thank you. I really hope so. I mean, I have been inspired by many and continue to be inspired by many. That's the one thing that I can give you for free, inspiration.
A question which is my personal favorite, Aman Ali has asked this. At stage in college, most of us being technical students, Do you think it's necessary for us to learn about managing funds to run our product? So, since we are creators and developers, should we be focusing more on creating and developing things or selling them? Like, how
Uh,
to manage between both of
Yeah,
them?
yeah. Very good question. Very perceptive, Aman. Very classic question also. So this is typically why you'll have a co-founder, right, Aman? So you will have one person who is the tech side of things and who is the brain behind the text, right? That is the person who envisions the product. That is the person who envisions the product specs, what the product is going to look like, how to create it, who to hire to create this product. But you will have someone who's going to be the product seller, the one who's going to be the face of the company, who's going to go to the investors and pitch it, right? Who knows how to sell it. So typically when there are two co-founders, you will find that one of them is the tech person, one of them is the one who sells. And that's typically why you have a co-founder, right? So that you split the responsibilities. Look, this question is also a little tough to answer because at different stages in your startup life of your startup, different things will be important, right? So at the very beginning, you first have to have something to sell. So at that point, you have to focus more on creating the product, right? So it's like, let's say you and a friend decide to be the co-founders, right? Or three of you. Well, at the very beginning, you can talk about what designations you are going to have and what roles you are going to play. But understand that at the very beginning, all of you have to first work on the product, right? What is it that we are going to sell? What is it that we are going to create? All the brains have to work on that first. As you grow, as your product takes life and gets into a form that you can actually show to the end customer, or you can actually show to investors, well, at that point of time, you have to start thinking about, okay, now who among us is best placed to actually tell our story, right? So every time that you speak to an investor, you are basically telling your story, right? You're telling the story of your company. You're trying to sell. You're telling and selling the story of why they have to invest in you, what is so great about you guys, what is so unique about your product, why should they put their money in you, right? So at that point of time, yes, then you will have to start thinking about, okay, now we have this, we've tested it, this whatever version is good to go and is really strong. Now we have to sell. So it's not that you will not be doing any of these, completely not doing any of these at any point of time. You're always going to be doing both. You're always going to be creating, you're always going to be iterating your product. You're always going to be, okay, in last version had these bugs, this is what we have to fix. The next version, what's it going to focus on? But there'll be bugs there too, and the product is going to get better and better with every release, with every version, right? That's what you aspire for. And at every point in your startup's life, you are going to be creating and you are going to be raising funds and you are going to be selling. But in what percentage you do these activities is going to vary, right? Is it necessary for you to learn about managing funds? No, not really. I think when you start off, what you need to have is, you need to be very sure that entrepreneurship is right for you. You need to have the mental toughness for that. You also need to have, again, being very real, you need to understand how you're going to start off. Like, where is the initial funds going to come from, right? Who's going to give you that funds? Because even if it's, let's say, if it's even two of you just working, and you just need your laptops and a place, and let's say you can just do it in your bedroom or something, and that's fine. But that'll only last a few months. Once you have your initial version of the product ready, you're going to have to start growing. So you're going to have to start thinking about hiring. You're going to have to start thinking about, or additional resources to help with whatever it is, with the coding, with the tech development. So think about, at the very beginning, you need to think about, where are the initial funds going to come from? Is it going to come from your family? Do you have funds put away that you have saved? If so, are you willing to put that into this, and how much? But as you grow, then slowly it will, it's a very natural thing. It'll, you'll start learning about fundraising. You'll start learning these things. Again, there is so much good information on the internet. Don't worry, you'll find all the information that you need to do about, how to raise funds, what's a cap table, how do I do this, there is a lot of information. If you're genuinely interested in entrepreneurship, you will learn all these things on your own. and it'll happen naturally. So don't worry about that. I think the first part is creating, having the right team or the right partner to create something that's going to solve a real problem. As you grow, as you develop that product, that's when you start selling. So you're always going to be doing both these things in various levels.
I hope ma'am answered your question. And
I
that was
hope so.
my question too. So I was totally satisfied with the answer. Now I would
Very
like
happy.
to present the next question. It's from Jay Shri.
Jai
Is there
Shri.
a right time that determines the success of a product? If so, how accurately to predict the best time to launch a product?
Okay. You're very welcome, Aman. Jayashri, great question. Is there a right time that determines the success of a product? Yes, there is. I would be lying if I said no. And that's where you need to understand, what domain is your product in and what's the problem you're solving. Because how to accurately predict the best time to launch a product? Yeah, that is very tough. But is there a right time? Yes, because if you go and look up companies, there were probably companies that had the idea that Byju's has now, or I know I keep saying Byju's, but let's use some other name, or any other company that has a product that's doing great now, right? Or take cryptocurrency or things like that. But a startup that wanted to do something with cryptocurrency maybe 5 years back, I don't know if they would have been very successful. Right now, it's the hottest thing, right? And everyone is jumping onto the bandwagon. So yes, general market trends, general what's happening in India, what's happening in the world. You do have to keep an eye on these things. We all know that fintech and anything that's deep tech based is always going to be evolving very rapidly. Anything that's very deep tech based is always going to be very lucrative. And I can tell you for sure that investors are always happy with something that's very deep tech based, and that's something that you're selling directly to consumers, B2C. That what we say as B2C is always going to be attractive to investors, right? So whatever domain you're in, keep an eye on the developments, keep an eye on what the top companies in that domain are doing. Is there a right time to launch a product? See, if you've determined the problem that you're going to solve, and if you've started working on the solution, see, don't wait for your product to be perfect to launch it. That's the biggest mistake that one can make. You launch with whatever version you have, right? I mean, it's a very common saying in among the startup world that if your product is perfect when you launch it, it means you're launching it too late, right? It means you've waited too long. You have to launch whatever minimum viable product you have, right? A minimum viable product that's solving some problem, launch, because you need to go live. You need to make sure that the investors can see that you've already launched. You need to get customers on your product. That is what they want to see. They want to see how many people have downloaded your app, how many people are using your product, how many customers do you have month on month, what is it increasing. Don't worry about other things. Launch, keep fixing bugs, keep iterating. Update your launch the next release. You can always update. So best time to launch a product? No, you have a minimum viable product, you launch it. That's it. But is there a right time that determines the success of a product? Yes, but I think in general, I think we all know the domains that are always hot, right? Like fintech now, and anything related to AI, ML. We all know these. We all IoT. We all know that all of these domains are very hot, very trending. Investors are very happy, and of course, since COVID, surprisingly, edtech has also become a very hot industry. But then again, it has to be deep tech based, right? That is what investors are looking for.
Okay.
I hope I
I
answered your
hope,
question, Jayashri.
yeah, do tell us in the comment section. Also, moving on to the next question. Sachi Kaushik is asking, what are the common misconceptions about marketing a product? Would you like to list some, ma'am?
Okay. Common misconceptions about marketing. Common misconceptions about marketing a product. Okay. Okay, that's an interesting question, Sachi. So I would say, so more than misconceptions, I think the way you market your product depends again on what is the domain of your product, of your startup, and who's your audience, right? So for example, if your audience is, if you're a B2C, and your audience is tier 1 urban people, then you have a different way of marketing. If your audience is as Learning Matters works with, if your audience is schools, then that, and tier 2, right, which is semi urban rural, then you know that they're all not going to be on social media. So actually, more than the misconceptions about marketing, you have to know who your customer is, who your audience is, who you're trying to sell to, and then choose the marketing methods that work for that, right? So if I continue to keep running our ads for our products on Facebook or LinkedIn, I'm going to go nowhere, right? Because my school principals, especially in tier 2, who we go to, they're not there. So they're not on LinkedIn and Facebook. So it's not going to work for me. It's just going to be a big waste of my money. So understand, is your audience tier 1, tier 2, tier 3? If it's tier 1, then what's the age group? Who's going to be using your product? Who's going to buy it, right? So for example, I'll give you an example. Education companies, they will advertise to the parents, not to the students, right? Because the person spending the money on the product is the parent. As a parent, I'm buying the whatever the solution is for my child. So think about who your audience is, who's the end person who's going to be paying for it, and figure out then how to market. Is it TV? Is it radio? Are these going to be people who are commuting a lot? So they're going to have the radio on. So then do I put my money in radio jingles more than TV because they're not in front of the TV, right? So think like that. And you have people now who specialize, people who do their MBAs and specialize in these kinds of things and can really help you with this. And you also have so many companies, so many firms that do this kind of customer analysis and can advise you. Of course, you have to pay them, but you can always take them on short term and seek their help as well. So, Sachi, I hope I answered. I think you need to understand it from the other way rather than thinking about the common misconceptions.
So basically, ma'am wants to say that you need to apply different strategies to different
Yes.
targeted audience. There is not
Yes,
the same
absolutely.
strategy for everybody, right?
Yes, absolutely. Not
So
the same strategy, but also, if you do have the funds for it, then marketing makes a big difference. Marketing makes a big
yeah,
difference because
indeed.
there's a statistic. It says that the average person needs to see an advertisement. I think they say 16 times or something before they start registering the name. Okay, so think about that. So whether it's you're running ads on Facebook, LinkedIn, or you're doing TV or radio or newspaper, that's the number of times you'll have to run. So if you have funding for marketing, go ahead and use it, but choose your marketing methods wisely based on your end customer who's buying it.
Thank you, ma'am. So the next question is from Snehal Varghese.
Okay.
She wants to ask you, does your audience affect your pitching strategy? If so, in which ways?
Okay, so yes, Nehal, really great question. I must say I'm really impressed with the caliber of questions coming from all of you. I mean, these are very thoughtful, very deep and insightful questions. And kudos to you guys. I definitely wasn't this perceptive at your age in college, right? I think I was just thinking about which movie I'm going to watch next. So very inspiring to see these kinds of questions coming. So Snehal, I'm assuming you're talking about pitching to investors of some kind. Yes, your audience does affect your pitching strategy. You have to research who you're pitching to before you go for the pitch. There are so many VC firms, there are so many angel investment firms, there are so many of them. Look to read up about them first. What does their ideal portfolio look like? What are the types of companies they've already invested in? What do they say on their website? You have a lot of funds which are social impact funds. These are very different from your typical venture capitalists. Social impact funds are willing to invest funds in companies that are doing something kind of for the greater good of society, right? So they're looking for impact more than a quick return. A typical VC is looking to invest a sum of money in you, but they want to see you give the money back to them very, very quickly, right? That is why they look for things that are deep tech, B2C, whereas a social impact fund is willing to wait a longer time for returns because they understand that what you're doing is going to take a longer time to have an impact. And they're more interested in the larger impact. So research your investor very, very well. A very quick point before I move on to the next question. Just as you should be very careful in choosing like a co-founder or a partner, you have to be even more careful when accepting an investor, right? It's like it's marriage in one way, right? So even with your co-founders, I mean, you're married to them. You better really like them, and you better be aligned to them. It's the same thing with your investor. If you have a very different philosophy, very different ethos, very different set of values as an individual, and your investor has a very different set, there are going to be clashes, right? You're not going to be aligned. So do enough and more research about the person that you're pitching to. That doesn't mean you shouldn't pitch, right? When you're looking for funds, trust me, you have to, I think you have to write to like 100 people, talk to 200 people before you even get to proceed in your conversation. I mean, I've lost track of the number of pitches we've done and the number of investment companies and funds that we've talked to. So don't decline any opportunity to pitch. Go and pitch, do your best. Make sure you understand what is their philosophy, what is their ethos, what are they looking for, which kind of portfolio do they invest in, and maybe what you can do is, after understanding that, bring out those points in your pitch, right? So if it's an impact fund, you highlight the impact that your product is going to have. If it's a VC, highlight the deep tech part of your thing. So I hope you understand. So look at what they want, who they are, and then highlight those points in your product, in your startup. I hope I answered you, Snehal.
Well, that was really crisp and it was really nice answer. So, ma'am, the next question that Chetan Siruguppi wants to ask you, ma'am, can you tell us about your experience in Purdue University and how did
Oh,
it help you in learning matters?
oh, okay, wonderful question. So I decided to go to Purdue to, I was interested in studying abroad. But the thing is, I went for a field which a lot of people from India don't go to the US to study child development, right? I mean, you usually go for your engineering and MBA and things like that. Here's what I will say. Whether it's, I'm not just specific to Purdue, but just in general, generalizing to experiences studying outside. See, even for those who have, a lot of you have probably, left your home and gone somewhere else to study. Any experience like that is very, very life-changing because it teaches you so much. I would say that, studying at Purdue and then working there, it was wonderful because the greatest thing that I learned from it is how to adapt and how to interact and how to communicate with people who are of all different kinds of backgrounds and ethnicities. I mean, a university is truly mixed, right? I mean, you have people from all over the world there, right? So I interacted both as a graduate student and later as a teacher in the classroom with people from Korea, China, Japan, Spain, Mexico, the US, and so many countries. So just being able to be approachable, knowing how to communicate openly and effectively with anyone, no matter where they are from and no matter how their English is, at a very basic level. I think that's the greatest thing, and I'll always be thankful that I made the decision to go and study just for that one thing, right? I mean, our world now is truly a melting pot, right? I mean, we even for those of you who will start working and continue to maybe work from home until we have COVID among us, is you never know who your colleague is going to be. Your colleague could be someone from Germany, someone from Japan. So learning how to communicate is one of the biggest things. Being an effective communicator, being a successful communicator, being seen as being open, approachable, and honest. This is critical, very critical in entrepreneurship, right? So thank you for that question.
Moving on to our next question, Meda Krishna wants to ask you, how do you think the pandemic has affected the market demands?
Oh, okay. Pandemic has turned everything upside down. You said Medha? Medha asked this question?
Medha Krishna.
Medha, okay.
Medha.
Medha Krishna. Okay, thank you, Medha Krishna. Great question. Yes, the pandemic has changed life as we know it, right? I mean, in front of our eyes. I mean, we went from regular life to suddenly everything online in a matter of days. And um, um, how has the pandemic affected? I'm sorry, what exactly? What was
How
the
do you
question?
think the pandemic has affected the market demands?
Market demands. Okay, okay, yeah. Um, okay, there is a greater market demand. There's the question. There's a greater market demand now for anything and everything that you can do from home, right? So anything that you can do online, simplifying any facet of your life that earlier you had to leave your house and go do. Being able to do that online now is, I think, become the biggest thing. No matter which domain of your life. Um, so anything that simplifies and makes it easy also to pay, right? So people don't want to handle cash anymore. People are trying to, I mean, I know at this point we're all fed up of being at home and everyone is trying to go back to the malls and things like that. But essentially, as long as we have to live with COVID, right? I think anything, any in any domain, any aspect, facet of your life, anything that makes it easier for someone to sit at home and access it or buy it and get it delivered home, I think is being able to handle any kind of transaction from home has become a big focus now, right? I mean, that's what everyone is doing, right? I mean, edtech, what is edtech doing? Edtech is trying to make delivering education to students at home. We are trying to make that easier. What is fintech doing? Fintech is trying to allow people to make all their transactions online seamlessly, sitting in the comfort of home. Everyone is trying to do that. So that's what the pandemic has done. Thank you, Shahil.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Sahil, for your question. Thank you, ma'am. The next question is asked by Suhani Bajaj. It says, what internet marketing instruments do you think are most effective?
Okay. Internet marketing instruments. Okay, so Hani, there are so many now, right? So many, and digital marketing is a whole huge domain on its own. Understanding the finer aspects of it are so much, but I would say, SEO, SEM, all of that has become very critical now because the first thing people do when they want to look up something is to go online and check it out. So making sure that you understand SEO, SEM has become very critical. Making sure you're able to direct traffic organically to your website is very critical. I also see that social media is still one of the top things. But again, in social media, you have to figure out where is your audience going to be. So for example, for learning matters, in terms of brand building, not in terms of getting across to our end customer, but in terms of brand building and telling the world that who we are and what we do. Facebook has been great because a lot of people sitting halfway across the world know what we do. They're not necessarily our customers, but they know who we are and what we do. But we're not on Instagram because Instagram is not the right audience for us to build our brand. Whereas LinkedIn is, because LinkedIn is full of professionals, right? So social media continues to be a great avenue. But again, in social media, choose which platform wisely. Email marketing is still the number one, because email is still number one way in which the world is conducting its professional work, right? Work is still happening mostly on email. So email still continues to be a great, one of the biggest ways of marketing. WhatsApp marketing is also becoming a thing now, but again, it depends on who your customer is. Is your customer someone who's going to be on their phones and on WhatsApp? Then you need to consider that. So I would say these are still the top things, Sohani. But knowing which one to use and how much to use, and do you put a lot of money into it, or do you try to use the free resources? These are all calls you'll have to make once you know what your product is and you know who your end buyer is, customer is.
Well, I hope your question was answered. Since we are running short of time, I hope we have covered most of the questions now. So, ma'am, once again, I would like to really thank you. We are obliged to have you here today. Thanks again. I hope our participants got their doubts resolved about project management and will use this knowledge to their fullest in their future ventures. Once again, ma'am, thank you very much to take out time from your hectic schedule to give it to us and give us insights to the product management thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was so wonderful to be here, and I'm so happy that everyone asked questions because I really did not want to deliver a lecture here. I mean, that's of no use to anyone. I mean, like I said, there are enough and more resources, but I have been in sessions before where I have opened it up like this and not really had many people asking questions. This was fantastic, and I'm actually very sorry that it's 5 o'clock because uh, I was really enjoying the questions because you guys are asking such insightful, such deep, such amazing questions. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure you can tell. I'm really sad it's 5, but once again, thank you so much, ISTE, for having me. And I really hope this was useful. I'm just going to say that if anyone wants to continue, conversing with me, you can always reach out to me at saras.r@learningmatters.xyz. Will I be able to send it in chat, Samiksha?
Madam, our tech team will put it. Our
Okay.
tech team will put it in the description too.
Yes,
So,
if you can
yes,
do
ma'am.
that, that will be great. If you can just say, it's saras.r@learningmatters.xyz. Please reach out to me. I'll be very happy to chat with you over the phone if you have any more questions. Always willing to help young entrepreneurs in any way that I can and that Learning Matters can. So please do reach out. I'm very open to, that's why I'm sharing my email ID, right? So once again, thank you all so much. It was wonderful to be here. And those of you who are considering entrepreneurship, all the very best to you. Starting off young there's nothing like it. The world is your oyster. So go for it. And I hope this was helpful in some way.
Our chat section is just flooded with all the thank you messages. You can just
Thank you
see
so
how
much.
successful your
I
session
see.
was.
I see that. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. You're very kind, and I loved it. Thank you so much.
We loved it too. So, on that note, we would like to end the session. Once again, thank you very much, ma'am, to have. We are very obliged to have you here.
Thank you
So,
so
yeah,
much. Thank you so
I
much.
hope our budding engineers will do great in their own fields, and we will see many entrepreneurs in future from
I hope
VIT
so too.
Wellbeing.
All the best to all of you. Thank you.